So basically, we're going to look at the excretory system. So basically, we did the reproductive system. There's also the nervous system, the circulatory system. There's different systems, just overall a part of the crash course. So the different types of cells, cell transport, and all of those things. A little bit about photosynthesis and obviously hereditary and variation, all them something there. We did look on that. So basically the whole mitosis, meiosis, and how genes get passed on and stuff like that. But now we're going to look at the excretory system. So basically the excretory system is probably going to be one of the shortest systems. But basically we just go through the main points. So it's for both CSEC biology as well as CSEC HSB, right? So it's basically the same thing, right? It's the same thing I need to know for both subjects, but basically in my memory, remember some years ago, right? We did actually see, or actually, I feel like it was the year that we did do CSEC HSB, the year we do that subject then. That was the year I think them put something relating to the excretory system and wish me did surgery, but that would be what the CSEC HSB the 2021 exam, the paper 2 for 2021. So as me look on this now, me I say wait, me did actually remember when me do the exam there was a question relating to the excretory system, in the sense that they were basically I think it was a scenario about one man where drink and stuff like that. I don't remember exactly what the question was, but as you can see, especially for HSB, this excretory system is going to come in handy, especially when they give you like a scenario and you have to know how the excretory system works. You can say, oh, this is what's happening based on what the scenario tell me, say, right? So basically, it's important, especially for HSB. When we do biology, we never really see the excretory system come on the exam like that. Obviously, it is a part of the syllabus, right, for CSEC biology, but we never really see it pop out like that when we do CSEC biology, because obviously CSEC biology is a lot more broader, and then CSEC HSB is more zoomed in on the human body, right? So that is why it would show up more in HSB. But yeah. So anyways, this is the plan. We talk about what is excretion and its importance, the roles of the organs that secrete, that not secrete but excrete substances in the body. Don't mix up secrete and excrete. Like when something excretes, we're talking about waste. Just keep that in mind, like waste we're trying to get rid of. With the word secrete kind of work more with when you talk about hormones or stuff like that, things that actually serve a function in the body. That's why something secretes something, right? So like for example, in our stomach we secrete enzymes, digestive enzymes that act on the food or eat and stuff like that. But don't mix up excrete and secrete, because they're two different things. And when it's a secrete, when something secretes something, more than likely it serves a function. When we're talking about excretion and the excretory system, we are focused on strictly waste, right? Strictly waste, something that the body just does not need, we are trying to get it out. So, and then obviously the structure and function of the kidney. So we're just going to look on the kidney a little bit, yeah. But I feel like I'm going to mention something else. What is my mind? I feel like, what was I saying about, yeah, so we'll just continue and hopefully remember what I think about. But basically, excretion, so it is a process by which organisms eliminate metabolic waste products and other toxic substances from their bodies, right? So excretion, if you remember Grimner, right, as in growth, irritability, that meaning sensitivity, movement, nutrition slash feeding, and then excretion and but it's a reproduction or respiration already, but you get the point. But yeah, if you remember Grimner, you know that excretion is one of the characteristics of living organisms, right? And the fact that it's a characteristic of living organisms, this can be an indication that something is living. So in order for something to quote unquote be living, it has to not secrete but excrete waste, right? because within our bodies different metabolic processes are taking place, right? And with these different metabolic processes taking place, we're going to have waste products, right? Even our sweat, different things. So yeah, for example, is our sweat, and obviously urine, and then feces, things like that. Even menstrual blood, that's also waste, right? So there are different methods or ways that we excrete things from our bodies, right? So yeah. Then basically the main purpose behind excretion, as I said before, we're trying to get rid of waste outside of the body, right? We're trying to get rid of waste. But the thing about it, if we're trying to get rid of waste, why is getting rid of this waste so important, right? And this is because of two things, well, two main things. One, we're trying to maintain homeostasis in the body, that's one. And then two, we're trying to prevent the buildup of harmful substances, right? So homeostasis is a very important thing. Is basically maintaining the internal environment. So basically, regardless of what is happening around you or around your body, or basically regardless of the temperature or whatever is taking place, it's important to maintain homeostasis, right? So it's like a constant, balanced internal environment despite external changes, right? So for example, if you go somewhere that's cold, and obviously that means that basically we will start to feel cold, because if the environment cold, we're gonna start to feel cold. But when we start to feel cold, our body's response is to shiver. So when our bodies start to shiver, that's the response that, okay, we need to maintain homeostasis, because guess what? If we stay in the cold, we're going to freeze, right? We're going to freeze. Cells and different enzymes in our bodies cannot function in that at that temperature, right? And so that's why we wear sweaters and different layers and different things like that in order to maintain that internal environment at the end of the day, right? So homeostasis is a very important part of just human beings, right? And then the next point behind excretion is to prevent the buildup of harmful substances. So basically, why is this important? So to prevent the buildup of harmful substances, it's important because one, it can damage tissues, right? So we know that tissues are made up of cells, so that's that. So we don't want to damage tissues, we don't want to damage organs, we don't want to just disrupt different bodily functions, right? Because let's just say, for example, you have the waste in your body, and like for example, maybe somebody have cancer or something like that, and maybe your colon or something like that is affected, and the waste is not getting out of the body. What can happen is that the waste can start to we call it, it's more like it kind of, why we just feel like we depend the word secrete, what is not secrete me mean to say, it's more like it can seep into the bloodstream, right? And if that waste gets into the bloodstream, you're in problem, because blood, remember the blood, if you remember the circulatory system, blood is what travels all over the body, right? It is what circulates the entire body. It is what basically works with every system within the body, right? And we say that organs are what make up different systems, right? So imagine the waste getting into the blood, and then okay, endocrine system completely mess up now, because remember the endocrine system is supposed to work with the hormones. Now hormones, they travel basically within the bloodstream. So that mess up. Circulatory system mess up too. So basically the whole double circulatory system with the heart problem start there so too. Um Everything can just get really thrown off in the body if there's a buildup of substances, right? It can become toxic, and it can basically kill you if you don't get rid of waste out of your body. And as I said before, it's done through the process of excretion, right? So this specifically goes for human beings. Obviously, like different organisms, they would use different mechanisms, right? So maybe something like what is it called, like an amoeba or something like that, they would use like exocytosis to like get stuff out of their bodies, right? So, but we're focusing primarily on the human body. Okay, so basically, now as it relates to excretory organs, right? So the main organ that we're really focusing on is the kidney, right? So basically, the kidney is the main excretory organ, and it is what filters out the blood and allows the waste to pass out through the urine, right? So even though the kidney is the main excretory organs, we also have other organs within our bodies that secrete different things. Not secrete, but excrete, right? So basically, we have the lungs, obviously, our entire respiration process, how we take in oxygen and then we exhale carbon dioxide. So the lungs do they do serve as excretory role. Our skin, because when we sweat, and our sweat is made up of like water, salts, ureas, just different things, right? That's also helping to get rid of waste from inside the body. That's usually why when you sweat afterwards you're thirsty, because you lose water and you also lose salt, right? So that's another important excretory organ, the skin. And obviously we say that the skin is the biggest organ, made up of three layers: the epidermis, which is the outermost layer, the dermis, which is below the epidermis, and then we have the subcutaneous layer, which is the bottom layer, which is made up of primarily fat cells, right? So even though the focus is on the kidney and it is the main excretory organ, we also have the lungs that serves its role. We also have the skin that serves its role, right? And basically, just to know that the urethra removes urine, right? So basically, the kidney is what would filter out the blood and make the urine, and then the urethra is where the urine would actually pass out to get out of the body, right? So as it relates to the structure and the function of the kidneys, so as I said before, it is the main excretory organ, right? It is the main excretory organ, and if we're focusing on the structure, or basically you just need to know what it looks like, but basically it's two like bean shaped organs, right? So the kidneys, we don't have one, we have two kidneys, right? So a normal, healthy human being would have two kidneys, and obviously you have people who um different illnesses, they only have one kidney, or maybe somebody donate a kidney to them, different situation. But a healthy, normal, typical human being would have two kidneys, right? Whether or not both of them functioning or not, they won't know unless they do a test, right? But basically it filters out waste from the blood, and we talk about why that's so important, because it can literally kill you. All that build up in your body can literally kill you, right? So it can help to regulate blood pressure, fluid balance, and also electrolyte levels, right? So if we're just going to look at how it's shaped, so we have two kidneys, a kidney on the right, and a kidney on the left. So basically that's the structure of it, right? And now within the kidneys we do have some structures which are nephrons, right? So basically nephrons would be like tiny filtering units within the kidneys that remove waste and excess fluid from the blood, right? So that's the like overall that's the main thing with the kidney. You have to know about the nephrons which are inside of the kidney, since they're the ones that actually do the filtering, right, in order to remove the waste. So it's not just the kidney that remove waste all by itself, it's the nephrons that's within it that's actually removing the waste and the excess fluid from the blood, right? So now we said urethra is actually what carries the urine outside of the body, right? And then if we look at it now, and then the bladder would basically be the sac that stores urine until it's excreted, and then the ureter would be the tube that carries the urine from the kidneys to the bladder, right? So the urethra is carrying the urine from the kidneys to the bladder. You can obviously see the bladder, and then you can always see the bladder here, and this is the urine inside of the bladder. And basically the urethra would be like the final place before it gets the urine outside of the body. So kidney, we have our tiny filtering units, which are basically the nephrons. Actually see they're the nephrons inside of the kidney. They filter out the urine. The ureter will bring it to the bladder, and then the bladder would store the urine. And then when you feel like, oh, you want to urinate, when you actually go to urinate, the urethra is where the urine would pass out through, right? So it's actually very simple. Like when you really look on it, very, very simple. Just know that is the kidney. We have in nephrons. This is what the nephron look like. The ureter, if you want, just follow along with the diagram, but you use the ureter, right? And do not mix up ureter and urethra, because I feel like when we learn it, we used to mix them up, ureter and urethra. Just remember, say urethra, the way down at the bottom is generally the exit at it to bring the urine outside of the body. So you would work with the kidney, right? And inside we have the nephrons, and then the nephrons are the tiny filtered urine units, and then the ureter would bring the urine from the kidney. So after the nephrons unfiltered, bring the urine from the kidney, go to the bladder, right? And then the bladder would store the urine. When you decide that you actually want to urinate, it's going to pass out through the urethra, right? So that's basically the structure and the function of the kidney, right? So it's actually very simple. Just look at the diagram and basically follow the diagram. And in this example, as you can tell, this is basically a female body, right? But it's almost the same thing, almost, except in the male, obviously you won't find a uterus and stuff like that. But yeah. So this will basically be the last thing, right? So how urine is formed. So we said that the kidney has basically nephrons, which are tiny filtering urine units, right? So these tiny filtering units, which are inside of the kidney, how do they form urine, right? So they're filtering the blood, right? That we know that. We just need to know that these nephrons, they filter out the blood, and that waste passes out as urine. We just need to know that from the get-go. So this diagram is very simple, and we're just going to follow it in order, right? So first we have the glomerulus, right? With this bad pronunciation, but glomerulus, right? And basically it filters out the small solutes from the blood, right? Because remember, this is the whole role of the excretory system, to filter the blood. And the end product is going to be urine. The urine is going to be the waste that is getting outside, getting out of the body. So the glomerulus is what's going to filter out the small solutes from the blood, right? And then the proximal convoluted tubule is going to reabsorb ions, water, and nutrients, and is basically going to remove toxins and adjust the filtrate pH, right? So it's going to filter first, then it's going to reabsorb ions. So it's basically a filtering process. Filter out the small solutes, then it's going to reabsorb the ions, water, nutrients, remove the toxins, adjust the filtrate pH. Then in 3, you have the descending loop of Henle, right? So descending loop of Henle, and basically basically aquaporins allow water to pass from the filtrate into the interstitial fluid, right? So that's going to happen, and then in the ascending loop of Henle is going to reabsorb sodium and chloride from the filtrate into the interstitial fluid, and then the distal tubule is going to selectively secrete and absorb different ions to maintain blood pH and electrolyte balance, right? And then you're going to have the collecting duct, which is going to reabsorb solutes and water from the filtrate. right? So it starts with the glomerulus, then the proximal convoluted tubule, and then the descending loop, descending as in going down, loop of Henle, then the ascending loop of Henle, and then you're going to have the distal tubule, and then you're going to have the collecting duct. So basically, this is just something more of a like a memorization thing. So you just need to memorize what happens in what, right? At the end of the day, the goal is to filter the blood and to pass out the waste through urine, right? That's the whole goal of it, right? So just remember the glomerulus and then the proximal convoluted tubule, descending loop of Henle, ascending loop of Henle, and then the distal tubule, and then the collecting duct. So you just need to remember those main things, right? Just remember those main things as to how the urine is formed.